would like to introduce our guest speaker this morning. Doug Stollery, QC. Doug is counsel to the law firm of Reynolds, Mirth, Richards and Farmer, LLP in Edmonton. He previously served as general counsel and corporate secretary to PCL Constructors Inc. He holds an LLB from the University of Alberta and an LLM from Harvard. Doug currently serves as the president of the Stollery Charitable Foundation and a director of CARE Canada. He's recently completed his term as Chancellor of the University of Alberta. In the past, he's served as president of the Alberta branch of the Canadian Bar Association, Chancellor of St. Stephen's College, and as a director of a number of nonprofit organizations, including the Stephen Lewis Foundation, the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation, the Legal Education Society of Alberta, the Alberta Law Reform Institute, Victoria School Foundation for the Arts, Grant MacEwan College, the Certified General Accountants Association of Alberta, and the Edmonton 2001 World Championships in Athletics. Doug is the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award from the University of Alberta, the Distinguished Citizen Award, and an honorary degree from Grant MacEwan University, and the Canadian General Counsel Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Doug Stollery.
Well, thanks, Mark, very much for that introduction. And it's a real privilege to be able to address the meeting number 1,475 of the St.Albert Rotary Club this morning. And Mark, I think we have some slides.
We do. I am moving speedily in that direction. Should have them up for you right about now.
So I suspect what's going to become obvious is that Mark and I have not practiced this. And we'll see how it goes. And as I mentioned earlier, I apologize for the light reflecting off my glasses, but it's a function of the fact that I'm in Vancouver. It's pitch dark. I have a choice of either some rather bright overhead lights or no lights at all, in which case there'd be no reflection, but you wouldn't see me at all, nor would I be able to see my notes. So let's go with what we've got. So my topic today is, where is the next great idea? Building a stronger society through community action. And by great idea, I mean one of those inspirations that takes root, develops community engagement and support, and has long-term positive consequences for our society. The vision of Paul Harris to establish the Rotary Club is a great example of a truly great idea. Now, great ideas come in all types and dimensions. For this morning's talk, I'm going to focus on great ideas to build and strengthen our civil society. But I expect many of the same lessons apply to great ideas in the fields of business or government. As we look around our own community, we can see lots of examples of the benefits we share from great ideas in the past. We're going to have a slide shift here. Think about the inspiration to establish the University of Alberta in 1908 as a secular and co-educational institution, which was quite rare at the time, and which has now grown into one of the world's leading research-intensive universities. In the area of sports, think about the inspiration to pursue the Commonwealth Games in 1978 or the World University Games in 2001, both of which put Edmonton on the world stage and left us with legacy facilities. In the arts, think about the inspiration to create the Edmonton Museum of Arts in 1924, now known as the Art Gallery of Alberta, which has left us with a remarkable collection of art in one of the city's signature buildings. In the broader charitable sector, think about the inspiration to establish the Edmonton Community Foundation. I'd like to spend some time on that particular great idea as a case study for future inspirations. I've chosen the Edmonton Community Foundation, or ECF, for this purpose for a number of reasons. First, 2020 marks both the 50th and the 30th anniversaries of ECF, and I'll explain that in a minute. Second, I had the opportunity a few months ago to deliver the keynote address at the annual general meeting of BCF, which gave me the chance to do some research into the history of this organization. And I borrowed from that address in preparing this morning's talk. And third, I was witness to the development of at least part of this particular great idea. Now, I expect many of you are well familiar with community foundations, including the St.Albert Community Foundation. I don't know whether Doug Campbell is with us today, but I understand he is very much involved with the St.Albert Community Foundation. But for those who may be less familiar with the concept, here's a thumbnail sketch. The idea is that you establish a foundation to which members of your community make donations. Those donations are held in an endowment fund, and the income from the fund is used to provide funding for local charities, as well as to pay the foundation's expenses and build a hedge against inflation. Theoretically, the endowment fund provides funding for local charities in perpetuity. Now, perpetuity is a long time and really outside of my comprehension, but community foundations are designed to last for a very long time and to provide funding for important community causes through good times and bad times. The very first community foundation was established in 1914 by a Cleveland lawyer by the name of Frederick Harris Goff, another example of a truly great idea. But for this morning's meeting, I'd like to focus on how that great idea became a great idea in our own community. We begin the story 50 years ago in 1970. Protests raged against the Vietnam War, the Beatles broke up, Richard Nixon was President of the United States, and Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister of Canada. Closer to home, a well-respected lawyer by the name of Peggy was acting as the honorary solicitor for the United Community Fund, now known as the United Way. He went on to be the Chancellor of the University of Alberta and Chief Justice of the Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta. In 1970, the United Way was looking to establish an organization to undertake the investment and management of bequests that it received from time to time. To achieve this end, Peggy looked at the structure of community foundations in various cities across North America. Working with a group of civic leaders, he sponsored a private bill in the provincial legislature for the incorporation of a similar organization in our city. The bill was finally passed, and the Edmonton Community Foundation was born, at least on paper. Creating a community foundation is one thing. Giving it life is quite another. In reality, following its incorporation, the Edmonton Community Foundation sat dormant for a number of years. What was needed was money, organization, and a dedicated group of community volunteers. For that, we need to fast forward almost 20 years to the late 1980s. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, the first commercial use of the internet began, the first George Bush was President of the United States, and Brian Mulroney was Prime Minister of Canada. And in our story entered John and Barbara Poole. John was a successful businessman. Barbara was a patron of the arts. Both were exceptionally generous, and both were visionaries. They were looking to establish an organization for community-based philanthropy. And for that, John and Barbara turned to their trusted advisor, John Slatter. John Slatter was a lawyer and a business consultant who had immigrated with his family to Edmonton from South Africa in the early 1960s. In the course of his research, John Slatter came across the legislation establishing the Edmonton Community Foundation and proposed to the Poole family that this might be an appropriate structure. To kickstart the Edmonton Community Foundation, initial donors were needed. John and Barbara turned to John's brother and sister-in-law, George and Ray Poole. They also turned to my parents, Bob and Shirley Stollery, and proposed that each family should join them in donating $5 million to the foundation to establish a $15 million nest egg. Both couples agreed. Looking back, this commitment of funds was quite remarkable for a number of reasons. $15 million today is a lot of money. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, it really was a lot of money, equivalent in today's dollars to about $30 million. And at that time, donations of large sums of money to charitable causes were not as common as they are today. I expect that at the time, these donations collectively were among the largest ever made in our community. When people make donations, particularly large donations, it's generally to long-standing and highly respected organizations with an experienced board and staff and well-established policies and procedures and having a track record of effective and efficient service to the community. At the point that these families committed to make their donations, Edmonton Community Foundation had no board, no staff, no policies, and no track record. It was only a legal concept. And when large donations are made, they're typically made for specific, well-defined purposes. Think of the construction of a building or the establishment of scholarships with that defined criteria. When these families committed to make their donations, it was on the basis that 50% of the income from each donation would be applied to designated areas of need, and 50% of the income would be applied as determined at points in the future by the foundation itself to meet the needs of the community. The donating families would not be part of those decisions. Then why did these families commit to make these donations under these circumstances? Because they trusted John Slatter, who was engaged to develop the structure of the Edmonton Community Foundation. He developed a structure for the board, an investment strategy, and a distribution strategy. He arranged to hire Lauren Leach, a former vice president of the University of Alberta, to serve as the executive director. Bob Stollery served as the founding president. You can see the list of the founding board members on the screen. John Poole and Louis DeRoche served as honorary chairs, and John Slatter served as secretary. Through the vision of John and Barbara Poole, the generosity of the initial donors, the brilliance, organizational skills, and diligence of John Slatter, and the commitment of its early volunteers, the Edmonton Community Foundation was up and running in 1990, 30 years ago. But this was just the beginning. The initial donors were quickly joined by other generous members of the community, including Allison Rice, Francis and Harriet Winspear, Eldon and Ann Foote, Herb and Orville Belcourt, and George Brasso, and by thousands of other members of the community, with donations large and small, taking the Endowment Fund from $15 million to over $600 million today. Grants from the Endowment Fund to charities in our community over the past 30 years have exceeded over $250 million, with over $26 million being granted in 2019 alone. This makes ECF the largest non-governmental financial supporter of charities in our region. Over the past 30 years, countless volunteers have stepped forward to serve the foundation on its board and its committees. And the foundation has been led by a succession of visionary CEOs, Lauren Leach, as I mentioned, and then Bill Mathewson, Doug McNally, and Martin Garber Conrad, each moving the foundation forward to meet the needs at the time while preserving the foundational elements on which ECF was established. Each of those CEOs would acknowledge that they were only able to succeed with the support of their teams of dedicated and extraordinarily capable employees. And if you'd like to learn more about the foundation, I commend to you a book that the foundation prepared the 30th anniversary of its initial funding, called Community Comes First, which is available from the ECF office. And it's a fascinating story of both ECF and the Edmonton community as a whole. From the beginning, ECF has been part of a partnership, not only with its donors, but also with the charities to whom ECF provides funding. These charities, their staffs, and volunteers are on the front lines, serving those who are most vulnerable in our society. These charities and the communities they serve are the reason why ECF exists. The story of Edmonton Community Foundation is the story of people. It's the story of people with vision and courage, people generous with their time and resources, people with compassion for others and faith in others. It's the story of people working together in support of their community. So, returning to the more general theme of finding the next great idea, what can we learn from the ECF story? Well, I think we can start with this quote from the ECF annual meeting, which borrows from a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a year was 20 years ago. In fact, for ECF, they adapted that to 30 years ago. The second best time is today. And what does the ECF story tell us about how to go about planting this tree? Well, first you need someone with vision. Then you need someone with organizational skills to develop a plan for turning that vision into reality. And you need community support, both financial and volunteer. That starts with a small group of dedicated individuals. And as the idea begins to take shape, it requires an increasing number of supporters. Ultimately, the impact of a great idea on the community is a function of the extent of community support. Rotary, again, being a great example of that. I do think that this is a particularly important time in our history to be thinking about the next great idea. This is a difficult time for the economy of our region, facing the impact of both the pandemic and declining revenues from the oil and gas industry. With the pandemic, many charities are facing challenges, both in their ability to deliver services and their ability to fundraise, particularly for those charities that rely on fundraising events. And the challenges to our economy are also creating challenges for our government revenues, as we face the largest government deficit in the history of our province. Those declining government revenues, in turn, are leading to declining governmental support for charities. At the University of Alberta, for example, the provincial government grant this year has been decreased by $110 million, with additional cuts planned by the provincial government in future years. And this comes at a time of a demographic bulge of students graduating from high school in our province, resulting in increasing demand for places at the university. It also comes at a time when university research is more important than ever as we search for a vaccine for COVID-19. In all of these circumstances, we need the next great idea to find new ways of providing community services and new ways of funding those services. It seems to me that Rotary clubs are particularly well placed to assist in the generation, incubation, and support of the next great idea. You meet regularly. You seek out new knowledge in your interaction with your speakers, and mission. And your mission is one of service above self. This has been your history. You were founded on a great idea, and over the past 115 years, you have inspired and supported many more great ideas. And Greater Edmonton as a community is particularly well placed to support great ideas. We're entrepreneurial. We're innovative. We function as a true community. While charities and service groups in other cities are often insular and competitive, we have a long history in our region of openness and cooperation. To all of you at the Rotary Club of St.Albert and all of your colleagues in the region and around the world, I encourage you to use all of your creativity, your dedication, and your compassion to seek out that next great idea to support our community. Again, the best time to plant a tree was 20 or 30 years ago. The next best time is now. Thank you for inviting me to join you at the meeting. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you so very much, Doug, for your inspirational words and for joining us so early from the coast. Questions for Doug? Really?
We have Doug Campbell here saying he does.
Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to let and thank Doug Stollery for his presentation. Doug, I'm the current president of the St.Albert Community Foundation, and certainly there are many Rotarians on this call that take the philanthropist to heart and are part, in fact, of the trust that we hold here in St.Albert. But thank you on behalf of our foundation to you for that talk. Thank you.
Thanks. And I understand you have a relationship with Edmonton Community Foundation as well. So that's terrific.
Yeah, we do.
I actually have a question. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. Very inspiring. My question is this. At the end, you said the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The next best time is now. If you were going to plant such a tree in the capital region, what would you plant today?
Wow. You know, if I had that brilliant idea, I probably would have given a different talk, which would have been about my new great idea. It's certainly a challenge. If there's one area where I think we could try to focus on for a great idea, it's this. I'm concerned that, you know, I look at the United States and I see a real polarization of society. And I'm getting a little concerned that we're seeing some of that even in our own community, where everything is on one side or on the other, and people are in one group or they're in another group, and finding common ground is increasingly difficult. And so if I have no idea how to plant this tree, but the tree that I would like to see planted is one that encourages people to listen to each other, to try to find common ground, because that's how we build community, that's how we build society. We really can't function as 2 or 3 different communities of people with different ideologies that don't listen to each other and don't respect each other. So that's the tree I'd like to see, and I would love to see the inspiration from this group as to what kind of seeds we need to plant that tree. I think Alan has his hand up.
I think, yes, good call.
Douglas, thanks ever so much for really an inspiring talk. In distributing your funds from the Community Foundation, what proportion do you think we should set aside for support of arts and culture in our community?
I don't have a specific number for you, Alan. Obviously, arts and culture are an extremely part of our society, and everyone benefits from arts and culture. So, absolutely, they, as well as all the other important causes, need to be supported. And I think to some extent that needs to be assessed from time to time to see what the needs are at that particular moment. At a moment where there is a pandemic, we need to assess the impact of that pandemic, for example, on all the different areas. And clearly it's having a significant impact on arts and culture. Obviously, it's also having a significant impact on health and on people, those who are most vulnerable. So, sorry, Alan, I don't have a specific percentage, but all I could say is it's clearly a critical part of our society that needs to be supported by organizations like the Edmonton Community Foundation.
Thank you.
Doug, there's a question in the chat box. What do you see the biggest challenge for the ECF moving forward?
Investment is a significant issue for any community foundation, because to be successful, you need to take the funds that you've got, and it needs to grow over time. It needs to continue to generate a significant amount of income over time. And we know what the markets look like. I haven't seen the markets this morning, but I understand yesterday the Dow was down about 800 points. So it takes courage and it takes considerable skill to properly invest the Endowment Fund in order to ensure that it keeps going. The wonderful thing is, if properly invested, as I mentioned, a community foundation will last, at least theoretically, forever. And good times, bad times, there's still significant income that flows out of the Endowment Fund for the community. So I give great kudos to those who are responsible for investments at ECF, because they have used a conservative strategy that has worked extremely well over the last 30 years. As you know, we've had lots of ups and downs, and it's easy to make money in the stock market. It's even easier to lose money in the stock market, and it's easy to lose money on a permanent basis. That has not been the case. They've been able to maintain and grow that fund. So I would say that's probably the greatest challenge. It has been successful on an ongoing basis, by the way, in increasing the foundation's base. So it gets significant donations every year that help, together with the growth of the fund through investments, continues to help it thrive.
Perfect. Thank you. Any final questions? I have one more for Doug, if nobody else does. Doug, I'm going to take you a little off topic. I'm interested in what advice you would give to Peggy Garrity as she comes into the role of Chancellor of the University as you've just left it.
Well, that would take me quite a long time, because Peggy and I have had, I would guess, 20 or 30 hours of discussions of what's Doug's advice for Peggy, and I'm sure she's really very tired of hearing any more advice from me. This is a really challenging time for the university on a number of fronts. As I mentioned, really significant cuts to the budget, and that, universities are not the most nimble organizations. It's the way they happen to be structured, and so to grapple with budget reductions of that scale is enormously difficult, and some really challenging decisions are going to need to be made. You combine that with the pandemic. I mean, the university had to shift from an in-person delivery model that had been in place for 112 years to an online delivery model over the course of about 48 hours, with about 5,000 different programs shifting online over that period of time. So that's remarkable. It's now facing the tremendously difficult issue of how do you deliver programming this term, and how do you deliver programming next term, not knowing what direction the pandemic is going. We all hope that it's mostly all done and we can return to normal, but maybe it won't be, and maybe there'll be a second wave, and what does that mean? So very difficult time for the university, and certainly for Peggy, who I understand may at one point have been a member of your club. Very difficult for her starting from scratch, and particularly since the meetings that she's having are all like this, online, and so with very limited personal interaction. So lots of advice for Peggy, and I certainly wish her all the best.
Thank you for that, Doug, and thank you again for coming out this morning, for presenting to us. We will be, in your name, as a thank you for your presentation at our meeting today, we'll be making a contribution in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus program, a worldwide program focused on polio eradication. And I will send this certificate to you.
Well, and that's very kind. Thank you. And when I mentioned great ideas that have been sponsored by Rotary, I had polio particularly in mind. Extraordinary work by Rotary.
Thank you very much. Now we have the honor of inducting a new member, and I would like for Ash, if you would, to read the charge.
Charge, okay, but how about an introduction first?
Please, go right ahead.
Ed was born at Royal Alex Hospital, December 1951, and grew up on the family farm with his two older brothers in the Strawberry community, which is now Thorsbury. He attended a one-room country school until grade 6, and then got to ride the big kids bus to attend Thorsbury for the next 7 years. After high school, Ed attended NAIT for 2 years, taking civil engineering technology. At the time, Charlie Schroeder was a bigwig there, but Ed did not get into enough trouble to meet him. During his second year, the drinking age in Alberta was lowered from 21 to 18. Needless to say, a little too much time was well wasted at Kingsway Bar. Ed did manage to graduate and went to work for Alberta Transportation. He spent 10 years there doing a variety of jobs, and during that time met Jackie on a blind date at a drive-in movie. They were married in 1979, and in 1982 started SPT Drilling. Ed's dream, Jackie's nightmare. Ed has 3 wonderful children, Lindsay, Donald, Sarah. 2 great sons-in-law in Levi and Sean. 3 adorable grandchildren, Elliot, Nico, and Theo. Around 2014, Donald took over the reins at SPT in order to give dear old dad a break. Since 2009, Jackie and Ed are spending more and more time in Phoenix. Ed is still working on a very part-time basis and continues to hurt himself while playing golf. Ed looks forward to starting a new chapter in his life with Rotary. Here's the charge, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Ed Heinzman, you've been elected to membership of Rotary Club of St.Albert because we believe you to possess those qualities of character and leadership that fit you to be a Rotarian and to interpret the Rotary ideal of service to others. Rotary acknowledges no distinction of race, religion, nation, or personal or political persuasion. All Rotarians are equal members of one fellowship, each expected to be loyal to their citizenship and faithful to their beliefs. Rotary offers a rich rewards of fun, friendship, and fulfillment to those who offer their own friendship and service. It also provides a unique networking possibilities, including the opportunity to visit any Rotary Club almost anywhere in the world. Service in the Rotary Club of St.Albert will sometimes mean raising funds for worthy causes and projects. It also means the giving of your time and personal effort to help those who are in need. Your fellow members accept your assurance that you will serve diligently in your club, your vocation, your community, and in the cause of international understanding, goodwill, and peace. Your fellow member accept your assurance that you will serve diligently. It will be your responsibility to interpret Rotary, its ideals, and its activities to others of your calling. And we encourage you to invite others to join your club. The community will know and judge Rotary by your expressions of it. We're delighted to welcome you to membership of Rotary Club of St.Albert and to the Worldwide Fellowship of Rotary. President Mark and fellow Rotarians, I have the pleasure in presenting to you the world's newest Rotarian, Ed Heinzman.
Ed, would you like to say a few words? That nasty mute button.
There.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. I'm very much camera shy and a person of few words, but very honored to be part of Rotary. Thank you very much.
Well, Ed, you have been a member of our club for a long time, and we are thrilled to finally make it formal. So welcome, welcome. And I will send this one to you so you can add this to your collection. Thank you, Ed. Welcome.